Day one of the Reese Senior Bowl practices is in the books, and we are reacting to some of the takeaways, plus the Dolphins with a couple of assistant coaches hires in the last couple of days. We're reacting to all of that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special shout out and welcome to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app or go to FanDuel.com. Bet $5, and if you win, you score $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, we got some sun today. We were down on the field for practice. We were up in the bleachers in between practices. There was an extensive lull at the start of the second practice. You never really know what you're going to get with some of these all-star event practices with different coaching staffs. Some coaches like to do what I think is the good thing for an evaluation window for everybody who flew from all corners of the country to come here and watch these guys, which is let them compete in a lot of one-on-one reps. And other coaches like to do a lot of install and walkthrough and special teams and individual drills and yada, 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 yada. And it seems like they always collaborate and decide, guys, this team's going to do the competitive practice and this team's going to do the walkthrough practice. So you got a slow second practice today. There's not a lot of takeaways from the second practice that took place. But there are a lot of takeaways for a lot of prospects that could be fits at positions. And frankly, I think, you shouldn't really rule out any positions for the Dolphins in this year's draft. And that's part of what makes it such an interesting cycle, offseason cycle. So yes, I would like to just readily acknowledge I got torched today. Okay. Fair skin. I'm from the North Mid-Atlantic, and you come down here, and even when it's 45 degrees, the sun, I guess, apparently hits you a little different. But we are reacting to some news here today on the show as well. Craig Aukerman, the Dolphins' new special teams coordinator. We're also going to touch briefly on Robert Prince, the Dolphins' new wide receivers coach, in addition to a bevy of reactions and notes that I had for players that participated in the practices today at the Senior Bowl. So I would like to start by saying I followed Coach Lem and the offensive line group for probably 3/4 of the national team practice with the full intent of knowing I wanted to see how Lem coached the guys. I wanted to see what kind of coaching points they were getting. I wanted to see how the guys took the coaching point. I want to see how Coach Lem corrected guys. And then obviously you're evaluating the players. And there are a lot of takeaways as it pertains to this offensive line group, which might be one of the best collective overall offensive line units that I have seen at the Senior Bowl. And I've been coming down to the Senior Bowl with the COVID year and then 2024, the only two times I haven't come down to this event since 2016. So I've been down here a whole bunch. And this is one of the best collections because this group in its totality, I made the point of emphasis to say, I'm going to follow these guys around today. I want to watch this group. There's plenty of time to go back and check the practice tape and grind the practice tape and watch the wide receiver DB one-on-ones and watch the quarterbacks throw, even though I know for darn sure I didn't miss anything. But the group of Ozzy Trapilo, Jalen Travis, Ozzy Trapilo, 6'7" tackle from Boston College. Jalen Travis played guard and tackle today from Iowa State. Jalen Rivers played guard and tackle from University of Miami. Ariante Ursary offensive tackle from Minnesota. Anthony Belton, offensive tackle from NC State. Gray Zabel was a tackle at North Dakota State, is playing guard and center here at the Senior Bowl and was the best of the offensive linemen from start to finish, going wire to wire. Josh Connerly, Marcus Mbo, Jonah Monheim from USC. Mbo is from Purdue. Connerly is a top 20 pick from Oregon. Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech, and Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. What a freaking group this is. And the fact that they are working hands-on with this collection, you could tell me at various junctures of the draft that you drafted Ursery or Belton or Zabel or Connerly or Mbo or Milam or Trapilo or Rivers or Travis, and I'd be like, great, it's a good add. It's a good add to the roster. So it was really exciting to see these guys kind of work through and see Zabel with the positional flexibility. And I don't think he's going to be a tackle at the NFL level, but I do think he could be a darn good guard. And I don't know what it is about these North Dakota State offensive tackles that come to the Senior Bowl and decide they're going to play inside and just randomly flip the switch and become the best offensive linemen on their units. But Cody Mauch did it the year that he came through, and Gray Zabel did it again today. The anchor, the technique, the punch power, playing at guard was very, very, very impressive across the board. And the one-on-ones, which are geared towards the defensive players because there's so much more space and grass that you have to protect than what there traditionally would be if you were actually playing a game and there's 4 players on either side of you, or 1 player on one side of you and 3 players on the other side of you. Zabel was awesome. He was locked down. And I thought this offensive line group had some guys who did very well. Ursery, I thought, was excellent. And the concern that I have with Ariante Ursery is kind of there's some tightness in his frame, but he played with a lot of zone opportunities at Minnesota, and he's linear-wise a very explosive athlete. And it was more so, okay, how does he handle the space to play tackle at the NFL level? But he's big enough, and I do think he's athletic enough, and he showed some of that in pass setting against Boston College's Donovan Izaraku. And I thought he presented himself very, very well. Josh Connerly played left and right tackle at the Senior Bowl here today with the practices and the one-on-ones. And the big question for him, I was talking to somebody that used to be around the Oregon program, and he said, just keep an eye out for how he handles power. I think that's the big thing that's going to be the question mark for him in the evaluation process. And sure enough, they did some drills where, you have to showcase your anchor by you're getting into a fit and you're sinking your hips. And it's the technique where you hop your feet back to kind of use it as an e-brake to gear down a power rush. And I thought the hinges, the lower body activation that he had in those opportunities looked very good. And he won his one-on-one reps as well. A couple of players that we're looking to see a bounce back for tomorrow. That's where we're going to go next here on Locked On Dolphins before we get into the Miami Dolphins and their hire for a new special teams coordinator. So make sure you guys stick with us. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, and endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on all the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you could place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Wyatt Milam did not have a great day. And came in with weigh-ins, and you were impressed to see he was over 315 pounds. And that was one of the concerns that I had with him, is it felt like he was a little bit of a tweener. And then you see him up close and in person. Some of these guys, you kind of see their body types a little bit better when you're not looking at the TV screen or the broadcast screen. And Milam strikes me as a guy who's probably needs a little bit more lower body strength and development in his game. And he doesn't have a great length profile. So he got a lot of work on the interior. I think he got 1 rep in pass rush one-on-ones, and he lost it badly. I believe that one was to Izaraku as well. So somebody who had to kick inside, play guard, struggled at times with first contact. I think the movement skills are obvious there. That's an element of his game that's really, really strong is the athleticism for his stature. But if you were hoping to, if you compare and contrast, and you can go on, I know on social media, there's a few accounts that if you search Senior Bowl one-on-ones, somebody has a 10-minute clip out there, which is the full segment of the practice. And it's every every offensive line, defensive line, one-on-one rep. And just watch the West Virginia helmet and watch guys kind of running through him. The strike timing not being where it needs to be, the anchor not necessarily needing being where it needs to be, and the framing of blocks on the inside. I mean, that picture changes. And for Wyatt Milam, I know there was some rave reviews about the movement skills that he has. But looking at him in isolation in those opportunities really kind of underscored some of the concerns that I had with him at tackle that were still present, despite the fact that he only got one-on-one rep at tackle. Marcus Mbo is the other one who is supremely physically gifted and came in a little heavier than I think a lot of people thought. But you see his frame up close and in person. And the way that I reconciled it was this. It made a lot of sense because there is violence in his game. He played right tackle for Purdue. But when I evaluated him, it felt like when he had opportunities to be aggressive, he really showcased that. But when he had to be a little bit more methodical, or when he didn't have the opportunity to tee off on guys at the snap and use his athleticism, it felt like there was some second gear strength questions that I had. And I think you see his body type and kind of his shoulders and his chest and where he carries his weight versus some of the guys that he's standing next to, like an Ursery or an Anthony Belton from NC State, who had a really good day as a tackle too, but it was listed on NC State's roster at 350 pounds, right? So Ursery's over 330 on Minnesota's roster. Belton's at 350. Even Ozzy Trapilo from Boston College, who weighed in at almost 320 pounds at 6'7". These guys just had what looked like more dense frames throughout all of their frame. So for Mbo, I think that for me underscores more. I think he's probably better at center. Now, he didn't get any center opportunities today. So that kind of puts this weird limbo where I'd love to see him get the work there. Maybe he just didn't get it today on day one, but that's a storyline for me that I'm watching. Now, if I were to scroll through some of the other names on this roster for guys that pop for me in one way, shape, or form, with the total acknowledgement that my focus for 3/4 of this practice was on the offensive and defensive lines, I would shout out a few names. I would shout out Darius Alexander, defensive tackle from Toledo, who is built like Adonis. A really, really prototypical frame that he has. And you saw some of the explosiveness and linear burst and twitch and power. So for a Dolphins defensive front that only has a handful of interior guys under contract, Alexander's a guy that very suddenly has my attention. And I'm going to be really eager to kind of check out and see, okay, like, what's the deal with you? Like how do you get better? Do you get better throughout the course of this week against an offensive line group that I just heaped a bunch of praises for? But Alexander claimed his fair share of wins throughout that. Landon Jackson, the defensive end from Arkansas, had a rough go today as it pertained to the pass rush one-on-ones because he took all his pass rushes in wide alignments on the outside. And just a total acknowledgement of his skill set. It's not really where he wins. He is more of a tight alignment, head up over offensive tackles, base end, or reduced inside as a 4-eye who's technically playing the B gap. That's where I think he shines the best. You saw him really, I think, struggle with the hip flexibility of playing with speed on the edge, and he lost his footing in and over the ground 4 or 5 times. Mike Green from Marshall weighed in above expectation, really explosive player. That's somebody who's not in play for Miami at 13, I don't think. But if they wanted to draft the best player available, I think the realm in which he would be in that conversation would be with their second round pick. But he looked great. And then a toolsy guy in Ja Joyner from Minnesota, who I thought flashed with really good traits, with prototypical length, good explosiveness, and good movement skills and bend in space. On the second level for linebackers, that we lost Carson Schwessinger. He dropped out of the event. But Oregon's Jeffrey Bassa had a couple of opportunities in coverage down the field and he's a rocked up physical dude. So that's the right kind of guy in my mind for if you're going to compliment Jordan Brooks. Look for that kind of player. You still want a guy with coverage ability that can run. And obviously maybe they make the choice to run it back with Dotson. But I don't think that would prevent you or preclude you from drafting a tight end to kind of help fortify the group. A couple of other observations on some skill guys. These are a little bit more body type and profiling things. Elijah Arroyo, I don't think is a great fit for Miami. I know he played at University of Miami. He's a seam-busting tight end. Everybody's really hot and on to this guy, and rightfully so. I don't think he's a great fit for the scheme, unless you're going to play him in the Jonnu Smith role long term. Now, is there an opportunity for a player like this? Yeah. Probably a late second, third round draft choice would be where I would guess for Arroyo, but he's bulked up and is running really well, and every bit of the fluidity and quickness that he has that's really startling at the top of routes still exists. I refuse. If you tweeted me in October and said, when I said Xavier Restrepo would be a perfect third wide receiver for the Dolphins offense, and if you tweeted at me and said, we don't need any more small receivers, I want an apology right now because this dude is built like a running back. He is a dense 200 pounds. He is built more like a running back than some of the running backs here at the Senior Bowl. And I know his film is littered with run blocking reps where he digs guys out. He would comfortably be the most dense wide receiver on this roster if they added him. I think he's a third, fourth round guy, depending on how fast he runs. But guys that have super good hands, run a bevy of routes, can win from the slot, can contribute in the run game, and are tough with the ball in their hands after they catch. Sure checks a lot of boxes for what you're looking for wide receivers, regardless if you want the arbitrary height of a 6'3" guy or not. So Restrepo, I'm still very much in on, but a little bit less in the lens of Tez Johnson, who came into this event at 155 pounds, which is just not a number you see very often. And when you get a number like that, you have to ding a guy a little bit. And he was a guy who graded for me as a fourth round value anyway. So I would be very surprised if that's a player that Miami sniffs on. Now, we still have Craig Aukerman and Robert Prince to get to, and I still have the American roster that we haven't talked about. Now, the good news was the American roster was the practice that decided we're going to give everybody about 15 minutes work of workable time on task, and the rest is going to be install and walkthroughs. So some quick surface level observations on some Senior Bowl standouts that might make sense for the Dolphins. And then we'll get into these assistant coach hires here next on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5 p.m. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature allows you to help write your job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Put the hashtag hiring frame in your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right. I'm going to file my formal apology to my boss and hope he doesn't put Locked On Dolphins on LinkedIn. Ross Jackson. I'm going to try to get American roster, Craig Aukerman, and Robert Prince all in on today's show. And I appreciate everybody's patience. Obviously, this show is running much later in the day than you guys are used to, but we got up, we did the Joe Rowe show. I did Locked On NFL Scouting. I was out the door to practice, and I got back from practice about 45 minutes ago, got a shower, got my notes together, and we're off and running. And the show's up. And then the rest of the week, the show is just going to post after Senior Bowl practices because I want to give you guys the insights while I'm down here for the players that are, I think the draft's going to be the central piece of this offseason. I think you could still sign and be competitive with young players who can be quality starters in free agency. A handful of those guys like the Aaron Brewers and the Jordan Brookses of the world. But this roster transition is underway. And if you're going to compete through the transition, you need to knock this out of the park. So Maxwell Hairston, corner from Kentucky, had a near interception when he put his back foot in the ground on a slant route, was physical through the contact window, fights across the face of the receiver, and nearly makes the interception. So that's a player who has a lot of combativeness on his tape and was a little banged up this year. But as far as like day two corner type prospects, he's not the biggest guy, but he's plenty combative. That's the kind of player that, because of the depth of the cornerback class, maybe slides a little bit and would be a good value for the Dolphins on day two. Billy Bowman at safety. He's just tiny. And I wish he wasn't tiny because he has awesome ball skills. But he had a good day today. He had an interception along the right sideline. But he's a player, when you watch him on film, the question is not the questions that I have with him, the biggest questions aren't really the kind of questions that get alleviated at an all-star event, because my questions are things like, how well does he tackle? And consistency as a tackler. And you get here to these practices and nobody's going to the ground. So it kind of creates, you have to compartmentalize a little bit as far as the translatability of what they're being asked to do and what their strengths are as players. And that's where I'm a little bit sympathetic to a guy like Landon Jackson. Hey, rush the left tackle from a wide 9. Well, that's not really your game, but we're saying we'll give it the old college try. And then he loses his footing and he's on the ground, and it happens to him 3 straight reps. That's just, it's kind of a stinky place to be. TJ Sanders, defensive tackle, probably had the best individual one-on-one rep of the day. TJ Sanders ran through the face of, it was Dellinger, the LSU guard. And he claimed the body, if we're being honest. And it was really impressive to see his power. This is a 285, 290-pound interior defensive lineman with a pass rush win rate over 20%. And he's kind of projected as a fringe first-round guy, probably would be like a pick 48 type of target for the Dolphins with where they currently have their picks. The quarterback to watch in this group was Jalen Milroe. And Milroe, I don't know. You're just waiting for a guy to take the next step in this class. And he obviously has really attractive physical tools. But the hand size came in under 9-inch hands. So very tiny hands for a quarterback, which is just another alarm bell to set off for his profile. I'd give a shout out to Baron Sorrell, edge rusher from Texas. I thought he physically looked the part. He had a number of really good reps. I thought Miles Frazier, I know Eric Smith asked me about Miles Frazier. He was in the second group, and I thought he had a very clean day. He was probably the most consistent player on that offensive line group in the one-on-one settings. And maybe that's some of the guys he got a chance to rush against, but he was a guy that popped to me a good bit as well. And then Mason Taylor, I would shout out as well. Jack Beck, Jalen Royals were a couple of guys in the wide receiver room as day two targets that I thought had a couple of nice wins. Royals is a route runner. Beck had a contested catch down the field on a deep shot, but there weren't a ton of completed passes in this group altogether. So that's Senior Bowl thoughts smashed into 25 minutes. I probably could have gone another 25 if we're being honest, but I do want to get the show up for you guys, which brings us to new, per reports, new Dolphins special teams coordinator, Craig Aukerman. Aukerman is 48 years old. He was the first guy to start in coaching in the year 2000 as the wide receivers coach at the University of Findlay, which is where he went to college. He's from Macomb, Ohio. He got his first NFL coaching gig in 2010 as a defensive assistant with the Denver Broncos, then the Jaguars in 2011. Got his first special teams work with the Jaguars in 2012. And he was the Titans assistant special teams coordinator in 2013 to 2015. Chargers special teams coordinator in 2016. Then he was the Titans. He went back to the Titans as their assistant special teams coordinator in 2017 before getting a promotion. And he held the special teams coordinator job from 2018 to 2023. He was dismissed in December of 2023 due to a overtime loss to the Colts in which the Titans had back-to-back punts that were blocked. And the second one ended Ryan Stonehouse's season, their punter. That, of course, being the thing on the Wikipedia page is the thing that Dolphins fans have picked up on. But depending on where you look, there are a number of respectable special teams grades for his units throughout the course of his stops in Tennessee. And one game does not define anybody, right? So I think it's really hard to know anything of definitive value about how good or bad this hire is right now. We just don't have the information. But what I do know is he's not Danny Crossman. And for that, we thank you. Now, Robert Prince, the Dolphins wide receivers coach, and this was announced on last week, comes with a very glowing reputation from the people that I've had a chance to talk to. So he was born in Okinawa, Japan, where he lived for 7 years before he and his family came back to San Bernardino. He played wide receiver at Humboldt State. Actually, he played his first 2 years of college as a wide receiver at San Bernardino Valley College. Then he's a graduate assistant at Humboldt State starting in 1989. So he's been doing it a while. And 89 is the year I was born. So I'm looking forward to picking Robert Prince's brain about wide receiver play. He was first a wide receivers coach for Sacramento State in 1992, from 92 to 93. Then he was offensive coordinator at Fort Lewis from 94 to 95. Portland State wide receivers coach in 98. Portland State offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach 99 to 2000. Gets his first NFL job in 2004. Offensive assistant, running backs coach, tight ends coach with the Falcons from 04 to 05, and then was the assistant quarterbacks coach in Atlanta in 2006. Assistant wide receivers coach for the Jaguars 07-08. Wide receivers coach for the Seahawks in 09. Went back to college for 4 years, including a 2-year stint as Boise State's offensive coordinator. And then Detroit wide receivers coach, 14-20. Detroit acting head coach, 2020. Houston Texans wide receiver coach, 21. Dallas Cowboys wide receivers coach last 3 years. So this man's been around the block. And I had somebody who reached out to me who had spoken with a couple of players that have played for Robert Prince. And they said his whole deal is the intensity and attention to detail that he brings to the table. And if you're going to use a word like intense to describe a position coach that's coming into this football team and this year with what they need to accomplish, I'm all for it. Give me all the intensity. So I don't know what kind of intensity Craig Aukerman's got. We still got to do some more background work on him before I have a firm feel and opinion and watch the tape of his special teams units, which when I'm not in Mobile, Alabama, sitting in a hotel room, sunburnt and just fresh out of the car from getting back from practice at South Alabama, I'll have a chance to do that. And when I do, we'll talk about it. But for now, what I can tell you is the assistant vacancies have been filled, and the hope now becomes that hiring cycles elsewhere don't put any new vacancies on the Dolphins' plate. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I am Kyle Krabs, and I am out of here.